My wife spent our emergency fund on a girls' trip, so I canceled all her cards, filed for divorce, and booked a one-way flight alone. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and for most of my marriage, I genuinely thought I'd cracked the code to stability. Lisa and I weren't rich, but we were steady, the kind of couple that planned instead of hoped. 5 years ago, we started building what we called our emergency fund. It wasn't glamorous, no vacations, no impulse buys, just quiet discipline. Every month, we'd sit at the kitchen table, sip coffee, and decide how much to move into savings. I loved those nights. They made me feel like we were a team against the chaos of life. Lisa would smile back then, proud. But over time, that smile started fading. She'd scroll through Instagram and sigh. Look at Jenna and Bali again. Must be nice not to count every penny. I'd laugh it off, tell her. That's why we're saving, so someday we can go without worry. She'd nod. But her eyes said something different, something restless. Sometimes, she'd make little comments that stuck with me. You know, other couples don't track expenses like this. Or you're too serious about money. It wasn't cruel, but it chipped away at that quiet certainty I'd built. I brushed it off because I believed love meant compromise, and discipline meant protection. Our apartment always felt safe, the hum of the fridge, the faint scent of her vanilla candles, the comfort of our shared plans. I thought that fund symbolized our partnership, our shared dreams. But now, when I think back, I realize it was the last thing still tying us together. Because soon, I'd learned that the safety I'd built wasn't real. It was just a calm before a storm I never saw coming, and that storm started the day she said she needed a break. It started on a quiet Sunday morning, one of those slow, comfortable days where the air smells like coffee and toast. Lisa sat at the kitchen counter, twirling her spoon when she said it like it was nothing. Hey babe, the girls are planning a quick trip next month. Just a few days. I think I'll go. I looked up from my laptop, halfway through paying bills. Oh, that sounds fun, I said, genuinely meaning it. She deserved a break. She'd been stressed with work lately, and I didn't want to be the husband who said no. But then she added, it's all expenses paid up front. I'm covering everything for the Airbnb meals, even flights. My fingers froze above the keyboard. You're covering everything? I repeated, trying to sound casual. With what money? She laughed. That soft, dismissive laugh she used whenever she didn't want to explain something. Relax. I've been saving a little on the side. You think I'm completely helpless without you? Her tone was playful, but something about it didn't sit right. Still, I smiled, nodded, and let it go. All right, just make sure you don't dip into the emergency fund. She rolled her eyes. God, you and that fund. It's not like the world's ending tomorrow. That line stuck with me. The way she said it, half joke, half truth, made my chest tighten. I told myself I was overthinking, that she deserved fun, that love meant trust. But deep down, my gut whispered something I didn't want to hear. This wasn't about relaxation. It was about rebellion. That evening, she booked the trip, humming to herself, carefree and glowing. I wanted to feel happy for her. But instead, I sat there listening to the faint clicks of her keyboard. And for the first time in years, I felt uneasy about the woman I married. I didn't know it yet, but that unease was the first warning sign of everything about to collapse. A few days after she left for the trip, I sat down to do what I always did, balance our accounts. It was a routine so familiar it almost felt comforting. The kind of habit that makes you believe everything's fine because the numbers make sense. But that morning, the numbers didn't. 3 withdrawals, big ones, jumped out like flashing alarms. Travel agency, $2,800. Hotel resort, $1,500. Flights, $900. My stomach turned cold. I blinked, thinking maybe I was on the wrong account. I refreshed the page, then refreshed it again. But the truth didn't change. Our emergency fund was empty. Every dollar we'd saved 5 years of restraint skipped vacations. Saying no to little luxuries gone in one swipe, my hand started shaking. I called her immediately. She answered on the 3rd ring. her voice bubbly and loud with music in the background. "Hey, can I call you later? We're just about to hit the beach." "Lisa," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady, "please tell me you didn't touch the emergency fund." There was a pause, just long enough for the silence to feel heavy. Then she gave a nervous laugh. "Oh my God, you're being dramatic. I just borrowed it, okay? I deserved this break." I didn't respond at first. I just stared at the numbers on my screen, every transaction like a wound. It wasn't about the money. It was about what it represented: trust, teamwork, the life we were supposed to be building together. She kept talking, brushing it off like it was no big deal. "Relax, babe. I'll put it back soon. You worry too much." But I couldn't even hear her anymore. All I could think was the person I thought I could build a future with just burned it down for a weekend in the sun. And in that moment, I realized the real emergency wasn't financial. It was her. Lisa came home 2 days later, tan glowing, and humming to herself as if she hadn't just detonated the one thing we built together. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, statements printed out in neat rows, the evidence of betrayal laid bare. She froze when she saw the papers. "Seriously? You're doing this now?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "Now we need to talk." She sighed dramatically and dropped her bag. "You're unbelievable. I told you it was just a loan. You're acting like I gambled it all away." My voice cracked, but I stayed calm. "Lisa, that money was for emergencies, not for margaritas and beach selfies." Her eyes narrowed. "You know what your problem is? You're obsessed with control. You track every cent like it's a crime to live a little." That hit me harder than I expected. I'd been careful, not controlling. Responsible, not rigid. But she didn't stop. "You make me feel like I'm suffocating." This was self-care, not some betrayal. Her voice quivered as she pressed her hands to her chest, tears forming in her eyes. "Do you even hear yourself? You're ruining my happiness over money." The guilt landed like a punch to the gut. Somehow, she had twisted it, turned my pain into proof of my cruelty. For a moment, I almost apologized. Almost. But something inside me snapped instead. I looked at her, mascara streaking as she sniffled dramatically, and realized this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was manipulation dressed up as emotion. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just nodded and said quietly, "Okay." That night, after she went to bed, I opened my phone, scrolled through bank logs, and took screenshots of every withdrawal, every text, every trace of her loan. Yeah, 'cause if she was going to gaslight me, I'd need proof that I wasn't the crazy one. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. It was just the beginning of something much uglier. The next morning, Lisa left early, saying she had errands to run. I watched her walk out, keys jingling, her voice light and careless, as if nothing had happened. The moment the door closed, the silence in the apartment felt heavy. For the first time, I didn't feel love or hurt. I felt curiosity, the kind that comes when your instincts already know the truth, but your heart needs proof. I sat at her desk where her laptop still glowed faintly from the night before. I told myself I just wanted to confirm the withdrawals, maybe see if she really planned to pay it back. But what I found instead shattered every illusion I had left. Receipts, dozens of them, all linked to luxury stores. Designer handbags, spa treatments, dinners at restaurants that charged more for wine than we spent on groceries in a week. The hotel charges weren't even from a girls' trip Airbnb. They were from a 5-star resort. Then came the texts. Screenshots from her group chat. My eyes locked on one message that made my chest go numb. "He'll never find out, I'll just say it was a loan to my mom." Laughter emojis followed. One of her friends even replied, "You're wild, Lisa. Wish I had your guts." I just stared at the screen, cold, not angry, not even sad anymore. Just hollow. The betrayal wasn't impulsive, it was calculated, planned. She'd thought about how to lie, how to cover her tracks, how to make me feel guilty for questioning her. That was the moment love died. Cleanly, quietly. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her safety net, her fool, her audience. I closed the laptop. Every emotion draining from me, replaced by a sharp, unfamiliar calm. Because now, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was done being blindsided, and for the first time in years, I started planning not for us, but for me. That evening, when Lisa came home, she was radiant, laughing about her day, talking about dinner plans, scrolling through her phone like everything was normal. I nodded, smiled when she looked my way, and pretended to listen. Inside, though, something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was an observer, quiet, calculating, and done playing defense. Over the next few days, I learned how to mask my thoughts. I kissed her good morning, made coffee, and asked about her friends, all while secretly rearranging my life behind the scenes. The first step was the bank. I sat across from the branch manager, explaining that I needed to update security on joint accounts. What I really meant was freeze everything she could touch. Then I moved my personal savings to a new account, one she didn't know existed. My hands trembled signing the papers, not from fear, from release. Every signature felt like reclaiming a piece of my sanity. After that, I met with a divorce lawyer. It felt surreal saying the words out loud. I need advice about asset protection. The lawyer didn't ask why. They'd seen that look before. We went over steps, property rights, and what evidence I should preserve. I left with a folder full of documents in the strange calm of a man who's already crossed the emotional finish line. Meanwhile, Lisa kept living her highlight reel. She posted photos from her trip with captions like living life to the fullest, and you can't put a price on happiness. Each one felt like a jab, a reminder of how icily she'd thrown away everything. Real for a moment of validation, but I didn't confront her yet. I wanted her comfortable, unaware, thinking I was still the same man she could manipulate. Because when I finally moved, I wanted it to be quiet, undeniable, and permanent. It was a Wednesday night when I got the message, a notification from someone I barely recognized. One of Lisa's friends. We'd met once at a dinner, exchanged polite smiles, nothing more. Her text began with hesitation. Hey, I know it's not my place, but I need to tell you something about the trip. My chest tightened instantly. I stared at the screen, debating whether to open it. Then I did, and every word that followed changed everything. She said she couldn't keep pretending. That Lisa had gone too far. It wasn't just the spending, the drinking, or the lies. On the second night of the trip, Lisa had been flirting nonstop with a guy they'd met at the resort bar, telling him she was single. The friend said she'd tried to stop her, but Lisa laughed it off, saying he'll never know. I deserve to have some fun. I read that line again and again until it blurred. My throat felt dry, my hands cold. I thought I'd already hit my breaking point when she emptied the account, but this was different. This was humiliation layered over betrayal. I typed back, "Thank you for telling me." That was all I could manage. For a long time, I just sat there in the dark. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. I could see her framed photos on the wall, her smile, her eyes, the woman I thought I'd married. Every image now felt like a stranger mocking me that night. Something inside me finally settled, not in pain, but in clarity. This wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't about the fund or the lies, or even the flirting. It was about me and the moment I stopped mistaking tolerance for love. And once I reached that clarity, there was no turning back. When I finally decided to confront Lisa, it wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no anger, just a quiet evening. The kind where every sound feels sharper than it should. She was on the couch scrolling through her phone, a glass of wine in hand, smiling at something on her screen. I sat across from her, folder in hand, and said evenly, "We need to talk." She didn't even look up. "If this is about money again, can we not? I've had a long day." I opened the folder and slid the papers across the table, screenshots of the transactions, receipts, and finally, the message from her friend. "Then let's talk about this." She froze. Her fingers stopped mid-scroll. When she finally looked up, her expression flickered, arrogance melting into confusion, then panic. "What is this?" she asked, voice trembling. "It's proof," I said quietly. of everything. Her defenses went up immediately. This is ridiculous. Those texts were jokes. And I told you, I was borrowing the money. Borrowing, I repeated softly, from a fund we both built. And pretending to be single while spending it? Her face flushed. You're twisting things. You always am not twisting anything, I interrupted. My tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. I canceled all the cards. The accounts are locked. My lawyer will contact you in the morning. For the first time, her confidence shattered completely. Wait, what? You talked to a lawyer? Yes, I said. And this conversation is the last one we'll ever have about trust. The silence that followed was suffocating. She just stared at me, breathing shallow, her wine glass trembling slightly in her hand. For years, she had controlled every argument, every emotional turn. But now, the power had shifted. She wasn't the one setting the tone anymore. I was. And in her wide, frightened eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, the realization that she had finally gone too far. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to let her see what losing me looked like. The days that followed felt like walking through the ruins of a life I'd once believed in. Lisa's reaction was explosive, a blur of tears, rage, and desperate apologies. One moment she was sobbing on the floor, clutching my arm, whispering, "Please, don't do this. We can fix it." The next, she was screaming, "You're abandoning me. After everything I've done for you." It was chaos, emotional whiplash, disguised as love. I didn't yell back. I didn't even argue. I just stood there, numb, watching the woman I used to know morph into someone I couldn't recognize. When I finally left the apartment, she followed me to the door, her mascara streaked and voice cracking. "You'll regret this. You'll end up alone." Maybe she meant it as a curse, but it landed like a truth I'd already accepted. Within days, she started calling our mutual friends, spinning her version of the story that I'd snapped, that I'd frozen her out for no reason. But something strange happened. Instead of sympathy, people began to message me, quietly, cautiously. Messages like, "I'm so sorry, man. We heard what really happened. She told everyone it was your fault, but those receipts. Yeah, no one's buying it." It didn't make me feel victorious. If anything, it hollowed me out more. The truth wasn't satisfying. It was exhausting. Every time I looked around the empty apartment, I saw ghosts of moments that now meant nothing. The dinners we'd shared, the late-night talks, the plans for a future that never existed. Freedom wasn't as light as I thought it would be. It was heavy, like carrying the weight of my own self-respect. I'd finally done what I needed to do. I'd cut her out, protected myself, reclaimed my life. But as I sat in the quiet that first night alone, I realized winning still didn't feel anything like peace. And that's when I hit rock bottom, not from losing her, but from realizing how long I'd already been lost. The morning I signed the divorce papers, the world felt unnaturally still. The clerk handed me the final set of documents, and as my pen pressed against the paper, I felt the faintest tremor in my hand. Not fear, not hesitation, just the physical echo of everything I'd carried for years. When I slid the papers back, the clerk smiled politely, but it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like stepping off a cliff. That night, I booked a one-way flight. No destination in mind, just somewhere quiet, somewhere far enough that her name wouldn't echo in every street. I settled on a small coastal town overseas, a place I'd once dreamed of visiting but always said maybe someday. This time I didn't wait for someday. The airport was almost empty when I arrived. I sat by the window, watching planes disappear into clouds, each one a clean slate. When they called my flight, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The life I was leaving had already ended long before the paperwork caught up, as the plane lifted off. I watched the city shrink beneath me, every street, every building, every memory folding into a blur of light and distance. For the first time in months, my mind was silent. No anger, no guilt, just quiet. I thought about every red flag I'd ignored, every apology I'd accepted because I was too afraid to be alone. I thought about the version of me who believed love meant endurance, And as the engines roared above the clouds, I realized I wasn't escaping her. I was escaping that man, the one who tolerated being betrayed and called it love. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. The calm that comes when you finally stop trying to fix what was never yours to save, and somewhere between takeoff and landing, grief turned into freedom. It's been 6 months since I left, and the world feels different, slower, quieter, softer. I ended up settling in a small coastal town where the sea hums like a heartbeat and mornings smell like salt and rain. My apartment is simple. 1 room, a desk, a bed, and a view that doesn't demand anything from me. After years of noise, silence finally feels like home. I work remotely now, just enough to keep life steady. My days are predictable, but in the best way. I wake early, walk along the beach barefoot, and watch the waves erase yesterday's footprints. There's something poetic about that, how the ocean forgets what it's touched, yet keeps moving forward anyway. I started journaling too. At first, it was just a way to make sense of the wreckage, but now it's a ritual, a quiet conversation with myself. The entries aren't about her anymore. They're about gratitude, about learning to eat alone without feeling lonely, about realizing that peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from finally letting go. Then one afternoon, her name appeared in my inbox. Lisa. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. Her message was short. I've been thinking about you a lot. I miss what we had. I hope you're okay. It's no apology. No ownership. Just nostalgia dressed as affection. For a moment, I felt that old ache. The urge to respond, to explain, to find closure. But I didn't. Instead, I opened my journal and wrote, "Some people only learn value when they lose what was priceless." Then I closed the notebook, stepped outside, and let the sea wind hit my face. For the first time, I realized I didn't need her to understand. Peace wasn't something she could give me. It was something I'd built on my own. In this time, it wasn't fragile. Some mornings I still wake before sunrise, old habits that never left. I make coffee, sit by the window, and listen to the ocean breathe. The waves move in patterns that never change, yet never repeat, a reminder that life can be both familiar and new at the same time. It's strange how healing doesn't arrive all at once. It sneaks in quietly, between heartbeats, between moments you stop checking for pain. Looking back, I can finally admit it. Love blinded me. I wasn't just loyal to Lisa. I was loyal to the version of her I wanted to exist. I mistook enabling for devotion, silence for peace, and sacrifice for love. I thought protecting her from consequences was kindness, when really it was self-betrayal. Every boundary I erased for her was a line one, redrew against myself. But the funny thing about losing everything is that it strips away illusion. Once the noise fades, you're left with something real yourself. The man I am now wouldn't let that kind of love survive a single conversation. Not because I'm bitter, because I finally understand that love without respect is just dependency in disguise. People always talk about betrayal like it's an ending, but I've learned it's a mirror. It shows you who someone really is and who you've been pretending to be. I don't hate her anymore. I don't need to. She made her choices, and I made mine. As I walk along the beach at sunset, the horizon burns gold, and the wind carries that faint, endless hush of the tide. I whisper the line I wrote months ago, the one that feels like closure. She spent our emergency fund on a vacation. I spent mine rebuilding a life without lies. And just like that, the story ends not with anger, but with freedom, because peace, I've learned, doesn't come from what you hold on to, but from what you finally let go of.